everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Meredith E. Phillips. I'm a writer, reader, and bunny mama. Today I want to talk about the fear of writing and what holds us back when we're first trying to put our story or our ideas down on the page. I think in order to really understand where this hesitation and this fear and the fear of judgment comes from, we need to go back in time a little bit and take a look at where this fear has originated. So let's think back to the first time you tried writing. How old were you? You were probably 4, 5? You were probably preschool, kindergarten age, and it might have been at home with your parents who were showing you how to write an A or a B. Or if you were in school, by the time you were learning your letters, it would have been a teacher showing you that you have to have a nice round circle and a straight stick for your A, and the stick for the A can't be tilted like this. It needs to be straight up and down, and your work was critiqued. And that is part of the job of the teacher. I'm not saying teachers or parents shouldn't be showing you how to do things the proper way, but your efforts were critiqued. They were judged by somebody else. Think a little later into your school career. By the time you're in middle school, high school, you're starting to write reports or essays. You're starting to share your opinion about a book you read or about a historical event. When you handed in those assignments, what happened? They were judged. They were graded. You literally got the teacher's judgment back, a lot of times with red ink on it, to show how well you did in sharing your opinion or your critique of whatever it was that you were doing for the assignment. Your grammar was policed. If you had the wrong kind of there, you were shown which one you were supposed to be using. If you were using commas in the wrong places, that was fixed for you. And there is an element of that of course you need to know. People need to know how to write formally. People need to know the rules for writing, but you are learning, in addition to those writing rules that we have, you're also learning that writing is judged. Think a little further along in your life. Maybe you're not quite there yet, but a lot of us have been in or are currently in college. Your writing is critiqued a lot more at that level. You are being prepared to enter the workforce, so your professors are being very nitpicky. They're grading your work very harshly. You also are going to maybe be interacting a little more with your professors in college than you do with your high school teachers in terms of written communication. I know for me, I didn't email my high school teachers a lot. Now maybe that has changed. I was in high school a little bit ago, but by the time I was in college, I was emailing my professors for different things, either to ask a question about an assignment or to make sure I was on the right track with something or to hand in some sort of draft of a work I was doing. Think about how you write an email to your professor. You don't just slap something down and push send. At least I didn't. I was writing what I thought I should write, and then I was rereading it and changing words and tweaking it. I wanted it to sound professional. I wanted it to sound like I knew what I was doing. I didn't want to sound like an idiot when I was emailing my professor. So again, I'm expecting my writing to be judged by somebody else. Maybe you're not quite there yet, but of course after you've graduated from high school or college, you're going to be entering the workforce most likely. And when you get your first job, you're going to have a supervisor or a boss or a manager of some sort, and more than likely you are going to have to email them on a fairly regular basis or provide them project updates or give them research information depending on what your job is. But it's all written. You have to email them, and when you email your boss, or if you're emailing somebody who has a job and you want to interview for it and you're sending your resume, you're gonna word those emails very carefully, because the last thing you want to do is make some silly spelling error or grammar mistake or have a double word or some dumb thing that they're gonna look at and be like, is this really the person I want to hire? Or wow, is this the person I hired to do this job? What if you're emailing customers or clients? You want to look professional. You want to look like you have it together. You know what you're doing. Also, when you have a job, a lot of times you're emailing coworkers. Maybe you're giving presentations or sending out memos. You are doing a lot of writing that is being sent to other people, and they will be judging it, whether it is consciously or subconsciously, and you know that. And that's why when you're sending those emails or preparing those reports or whatever you're doing, you're going to be doing it very carefully. You're going to reread what you've got. You're going to tweak some things. You're going to move around sentences if it doesn't sound right. You're going to try to make it as good as you can. Even beyond the school and work environment, let's think about social media. If you have Instagram, Twitter, TikToks, Snapchats, whatever you've got going on, a lot of those platforms have a written component to it. Instagram, of course, you've got your caption. Twitter is all words for the most part, unless you also post a picture, but usually you've got words to go with it. And you want to make sure those words sound good, because those social media platforms give people a chance to respond to you. People will either comment, they'll like it, they'll retweet it, they'll do something to show when they have enjoyed your post. So what does this all mean? It means that from a very young age, 4 or 5 years old, all the way up until you're entering the workforce, you have learned that your writing will be judged, regardless of the context. Whether you're just sending a text to a friend or you're sending an email to a really high up person in your company. So when you sit down to write for yourself, it's no wonder that subconsciously you are still thinking, ooh, I need to make sure I'm using the comma in the right place, or I'm spelling this word correctly, or this sounds really clunky and awful. I need to erase it and delete it and try it again. We're constantly self-editing and judging our own work, even when it's not going to be seen by anybody else unless we choose to allow it to be seen. We have internalized that judgment, and so then we self-consciously critique our own work when it doesn't even really matter if we spell things correctly or if our sentences are really clunky. When you sit down to write for yourself, whether it's a story, a poem, or even just a journal entry, a lifetime of judgment is sitting on your shoulder. That inner editor is an amalgamation of all the previous judgments and critiques and grades and feedback that we have received. And all of that causes fear. We sit down and we still are heavily editing our own work as we go. We write a sentence and it doesn't sound good. We used the word yellow when we could have used the word chartreuse. And we're constantly trying to make it perfect, make it better, make it something that other people will think is good work. And this fear, it paralyzes us. We sit there and we stare at the blank screen, or we sit there and we stare at the last sentence we wrote, and we think about what everyone else is going to think when they read it. And that is not what you should be thinking when you first sit down to write. So the big question is, how do we get past this? How do we take this fear of judgment that we have learned exists since almost the beginning of our life? How do we take that and move on to a place where we can sit down, write our story, and move forward without feeling like we're being constantly judged? My first tip is to create for yourself a judgment-free zone. This is key, but it's also very difficult. How do you do that? Where are you going to put your work where nobody else is gonna see it? We are not posting it on Wattpad. We are not posting snippets on our Instagram. It's going to just be for you, at least at the beginning. So if you're living alone, this isn't much of a problem. Pull up a Word document, a Scrivener file, Google Docs, whatever your word processing program of choice is. If you're living with other people and you're nervous that maybe somebody is going to find it, guess what? Word and all of these other platforms have password protection that you can apply to individual documents. So if you are afraid that your roommate or your little brother is going to find it and read it, Put that password protection on the document and you're good to go. The other thing I would highly suggest that all writers try is journaling. This is a little more risky because of course your journal is just a book and it's going to be lying around somewhere. When I was in high school, I started journaling and it was such a freeing space. Within the confines of that notebook, within those covers, it was only me. If I was having a crappy day, I would sometimes literally take my pen and just scribble on the page. I could do my best handwriting if I liked, or I could be as messy as I wanted. I could complain about being tired and all the homework I had to do, or I could write something a little more deep and meaningful about my emotional state or whatever I was going through. The point was that book, that journal was only for me. I was the only one who got to see it. And I was extremely protective over it. In high school, I used to bring my journal with me to school and keep it in my backpack so that it did not have to be left at home where my brother or my mom or somebody else might find it and start reading it. And then when I was finished with a journal, I had a duffel bag with a padlock on it and I stored them all in there. I do still journal and it is a great place to just be free. If my handwriting is messy one morning, I do not care. I'm a terrible speller. There's a lot of misspellings in there and I don't care. I write it the way I think it's going to be spelled and then I keep going and it's not a big deal. Don't worry about how it sounds. Don't worry about if it's written perfect. Just write it and move on. There's one tip I've seen a couple different places that is a great idea if you are the type of person that likes to go back and reread what you've written after a few sentences. The tip is to use white font so that you cannot see what you have written and just go. My next suggestion is to practice writing terrible things. Literally sit down and try to write a story or a little poem or some little snippet of a scene. Write it in the worst cliched way possible. Use adverbs out the wazoo. Use terrible cliches. Repeat the same word multiple times. Use the word just and really 1,000 times in it if you want. Write something and make it purposefully as terrible as you possibly can, and then leave it. Be okay with having something terrible like that. It doesn't matter because no one's gonna see it. Remember too, and this one is so hard, and I think it applies to so many areas of life, not just writing, but you have to remember to compare yourself to yourself. Compare yourself today to yourself from yesterday. Are you improving, even just by a little bit? If you're trying to compare your writing when you first start to that published author who's been publishing since 1990 and has 25 books under their belt, you're gonna lose the battle. There's no way that your first attempt at writing is gonna be as good as theirs. It's not gonna happen. So to look at those types of authors who are well established, it's not going to help you to do better on a daily basis. It's great to look at those authors as an inspiration, as motivation to keep going, but don't try to compare what you have going on to them. They are a professional. They've got help from their literary agent. They've got help from a professional editor. They've got a huge support system, and you're just starting, or you've only been doing it maybe for a little while, and that's okay. Your writing is not gonna be at that level yet. And it shouldn't be because you're just a beginner. There's a great quote from Samuel Beckett that says, "Ever tried, ever failed, no matter. Try again, fail better." I love this quote. I actually have it on my little my little motivation board back here. It is so perfect. I love the idea of going forward with the intention to fail again. You're still trying. Even if you know going in, you're probably not going to get it. That's okay. You're gonna fail better than you did last time, and then you're gonna try again. And you're gonna keep pushing forward until you make it. It's a necessary component to everything you do in life, and writing is no exception. Remember too, when you start writing, that your writing does not have to be shared. I've spent 4 years writing, and I am within the last couple months beginning to share that work with a small group of people. Up until this point, I did not want to share what I was doing. I didn't feel comfortable about it. I didn't like the idea of sharing it, but I'm at a point now where I know I need help from other writers to improve beyond the point I'm at currently. And so I am willingly putting that work in front of them to hear their critiques and their suggestions for how to do better. And I'm personally ready for that. Don't put the pressure on yourself to share before you're ready. My next suggestion is to practice writing for 10 or 15 minutes straight without stopping. I find that when I sit down to start writing a scene or start a new book or a new chapter, the first 5, 10, 15 minutes are really awkward. It's clunky sentences. It's not great writing. And it takes me a few minutes to kind of get into the groove, to get into the characters' heads. And after that initial 10 or 15 minute period of kind of junk writing, it starts to flow a little easier. So don't sit down and expect that the first sentence out of the gate is gonna be perfection. It's not gonna be, more than likely. So make yourself sit down, make yourself type or pick up that pen and just write for 15 minutes. Do not stop, don't go back and reread what you've got, just keep going so you can get past that initial hump of weirdness when you're not really quite in the groove of it yet. Let those first few minutes be bad. You can fix it later. It's not a big deal. And finally, when you finish writing, instead of going back and looking over it and thinking, I've used the word really 15 times in this paragraph, or I've used the most banal language ever, don't look for the faults. Find 3 positive things about what you wrote that day. It could be a particular sentence that you think came out really well. It could be a really great word choice. It could be the fact that you finally came up with a nice character name for the main character in your story. Whatever it is, find 3 things that you like and are positive about your writing and say them out loud. Make it positive and leave it. Do not qualify them. Don't go in saying, I like this sentence because I think it sounds good, but the next one is really junky. No, I like this sentence. I think it came out really well. That's it. Don't add on a negative thought to that positive one. Let it be positive. Be proud of yourself for the things that you find that you enjoy in that writing piece. So just to wrap things up, the big thing to remember with this is that this is a mindset shift. You are changing the way you think about writing that has been instilled in you your entire life. It's not going to be something that you can just switch and be good to go. It's hard to change something that you've believed in for 10, 15, 20, 30 years of your life. That's a long time and a very deep belief that you have to work to change. We're very used to instant gratification in our society. We want things to be quick and easy and now. This is not going to be that. It's going to take a little bit of time to get used to writing without fearing that judgment that you think is gonna come. And remember, you can do it. This is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be creative. It's supposed to be something that you enjoy doing. So don't take the judgment that you're used to receiving from the rest of the world and bring it into your writing space, because that is not the place for it. So that's all I have for you today. I know that was a lot. Let me know in the comments, do you struggle with the fear of writing? Do you struggle to write and not worry about what anyone else might say about it? If you have tips or advice or suggestions for us about how you personally make yourself move past that and get into the mindset of no judgment, let us know. That will be super helpful for everyone else here. Thank you so much for joining me. If you'll give me a like and a subscribe, that would be great. I will see you back here next week. Bye. When we're first trying to put our story or our ideas